Today I'm over in Pine Tree Park here in Miami Beach, and it's been a while since I've been here, so I figured I'd come back here, shoot another video here for you guys. And as much as I like going to new spots, I also like circling back to some of my old favorites because I'm just like that. I like familiarity and coming back to places I haven't seen in a little while. There's just something that feels good when things feel familiar, like a comfort of being close to home. I'll tell you one thing that's not too comfortable right now, for at least for some people, is that home prices here in the US have just seen their biggest annualized drop that we've seen in 11 years. The median home price went down 1.7% to $388,000 in April, according to the National Association of Realtors. And this is the biggest drop on record since 2012. And according to the National Association of Realtors, home prices have fallen 6% from their peak last summer, which were at 413,000. And now they're at 388. And I know when you look at Redfin's numbers, the difference is even more dramatic, and it's down even further than that. The western half of the US is getting the lion's share of these price declines. Meanwhile, while places over in the eastern part of the country are actually seeing prices go up still. And this is not really that big of a surprise when you just look at the difference in home prices, guys. Like, I covered a story earlier in the week about a couple from Connecticut that was feeling priced out, and their price range was like in the 300K price point. Like, that's affordable almost anywhere now. And I know some people might still argue that that's unaffordable, Michael, but compared to today's standards of what homes cost across the country, 300K is not a bad deal anymore. Problem is, those 300K houses used to cost 100. I think that's one of the main reasons why the East Coast hasn't seen the big price declines like the western half of the US has, because a lot of these western cities are far higher valued in terms of median home price versus many of these East Coast cities. And it's not just home prices that are taking a nosedive. You also have existing home sales taking a nosedive as well. So this whole housing market slowdown is real, guys. You can deny it all you want, but we're starting to see month after month in the data of how things are just slowing down more and more, practically by the month. And we're in peak home buying season right now. We're almost in summer. It's almost June. So we should be seeing, home prices skyrocket. We should be seeing inventory skyrocket. We should be seeing closed sales skyrocket. But yet none of that is actually happening during traditionally the most busy time of the year when it comes to buying a home. So why is that? In fact, right now, existing home sales have dropped 23.2% year over year, even further than home prices are actually coming down. And like I've told you guys before, I think the number one reason why home prices haven't completely collapsed yet is because inventory is still too low for that to happen. That's just the reality. Until we see the wave of inventory, home prices are not going to collapse, but they are starting to incrementally come down even without the surge in inventory. And that's kind of like the warning I want to try to keep hammering home to people on the channel, because I know with the set of circumstances that we're going through right now, it might feel like home prices will never come down, because you've been hearing about a housing crash for the past couple of years and it's not really happening. Home prices only down marginally, or maybe even up depending on where you live. Everybody talking about the housing crash must be full of it. Well, not so fast. It's not really that simple. The part that you haven't taken into consideration, if that's how you think, is this. The economy has not deteriorated yet into the point where we're going to see the wave of inventory. And that is going to come from high unemployment, and it's also going to come from the herd mentality, is when people that have been thinking about selling but don't think it's the right time start seeing a bunch of homes go up for sale in their neighborhood and feel like, oh my God, I better sell now before it's too late. And that's the other thing, guys. People move in herds, it seems like, especially when it comes to behavior. And when people start seeing a lot of listings come up in their neighborhood, eventually they might end up selling too, because they're afraid that they might miss out. Just like people FOMOing into the market, you can see the same behavior in reverse with people FOMOing out of the market because they're worried about how much they might lose. And everybody thinks that just because people have low rates, that there's no chance they're going to sell. And that's just not true. We've talked about this 100 times before, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there are countless numbers of reasons that people might want to sell their homes or need to sell their homes, even if they have a low interest rate, guys. In fact, I made an entire video on this months ago, and I'll link it here. I'll put it up on the screen so you know which one it is, and have a link for it in the description if you want to go see all those reasons. And here's the other thing, that even with all of these amazing scenarios, low unemployment, right? Inflation coming down, we're not in a recession, we're still seeing home prices come down. Why? Well, because people can't afford to buy homes at these prices and interest rates. But if you live in the Midwest, for example, or you live in the Northeast, you might actually be seeing home prices going up. And there is a possibility during this recession, your area could hold on a lot stronger than many other areas, because the housing market dynamics where you live just make fundamental sense, whereas in a lot of other places like here where I live, they completely don't. It's detached from reality 100%. So places like here could see a much bigger correction or crash in home prices versus places that haven't gotten completely insane or out of control with the prices. So who is buying all these houses right now? Well, according to National Association of Realtors, 29% of all the homes sold in April accounted for first-time home buyers, okay? 28% of the transactions were all cash sales. So that's already more than half of the homes sold right there. And individual investors or second home buyers made up 17% of the home sales. And distressed sales, which are foreclosures or short sales, they only made up 1% of all the home sales in April. Now, when you break down how much prices are declining based on the property type, single-family home sales are down by 3.5% and 22.4% down year over year. So single-family home sales are taking a huge hit. The prices for single-family homes are down 2.1% year over year as of April 2023. Condo and co-op sales, they're down 2.3% as of March and down 29.5% year over year. So the sales numbers are absolutely horrendous right now, guys, and it makes me very happy that I'm here talking to you guys on YouTube right now instead of out there trying to sell real estate, because it is a whole lot tougher right now than it has been in a very long time. Not that it was ever easy here in Miami, considering we have more realtors here than anywhere else in the country. Now here's the regional breakdown of the home price declines, okay? In the western part of the country, home prices are down 8% on average right now. And in the southern US, they're down 0.6%, so down just a little bit, almost flat. But if you're in the Midwest, home prices are actually up 1.8%. And if you're in the Northeast, they're up 2.8%. But like I said, guys, why is this happening? Because homes in these areas are still far more affordable than how unaffordable it's gotten in the western part of the country and all these pandemic boom towns of the South. Now, because housing has become so unaffordable, people have been asking me, what do you think about buying a property that's in a foreclosure auction? I think it's generally fine for people to do this, but you need to realize that this is not as easy or simple as you might think. And even though you can get a big discount when you buy a property like this, you could be facing some pretty large repair costs with properties like this. Now, the number one thing that you need to be aware of that most people probably don't know, when you're buying one of these auction properties, you can't finance the property, guys. You have to pay cash. Most mortgage lenders are not even going to consider financing a property like this because they might still be occupied by the previous owner that's getting foreclosed on. And even if it's not and it's empty, you're not allowed to go in and inspect the property ahead of time. And the lender is not going to lend on a property that they can't do an inspection or an appraisal on. So these properties are sold as is. You have to just guesstimate how much work might actually need to be done, which is a complete unknown number. And basically, if you win the auction, you have to show up on the day of the auction or sometimes the next day by a certain time frame and pay the full amount in cash, which usually has to be paid via a wire transfer or a cashier's check. So automatically, if you know you can't afford to pay cash for a house, you might as well eliminate this from your mind because you're not going to be buying an auction property. To add on top of that, you don't even know how much the property is going to sell for at auction. You can kind of estimate what you think it's going to be, but if you do have the cash, for example, you need to bring as much cash as you're willing to actually spend on that property and be ready to hand them a check for that amount. Okay, even if it sells for less, how it usually will work, they sell the property to you for say $300,000, right? And you brought a check for $500. Well, you're gonna have to give them the check for $500, and then they'll refund you the difference of the $200K, probably by sending you a check in the mail or something like that. And on top of all this, if you are the lucky winner of a foreclosure auction, okay, you are essentially in charge of paying off the mortgage on the property, and you're responsible for any additional liens that might be attached to the property. So there could be additional costs on top of the purchase price to buying one of these auction houses. So I know some people can make it sound like this is the best deal in the world, that you can get a property 30% under market value, but by the time maybe you get stuck with some of these fees and you have to do a $100K renovation on the house because it's completely destroyed, you might not be coming out that far ahead, guys. You really have to know your market. Obviously, you have to have a lot of money. This eliminates many people from even considering doing this. Even for me, like if I had the cash to buy one of these auction properties and I was actually willing to do it, I think probably the biggest downside or deal breaker for me would be the fact that you're not allowed to inspect the property, guys, because even if the property is empty, you're not allowed to go on the premises. That's considered trespassing. You're breaking the law because you don't own the property. And, you know, sometimes you still have the old homeowners living in there to the last minute, you know, riding out this foreclosure for as long as they can to live rent-free. So you can quickly see how buying a home at auction probably is not a great idea for most people, or not even really a possibility, but I wanted to just cover it here because some people have been asking me about it, probably out of desperation to find a cheaper way to buy a home. And it can be cheaper, guys, but it comes with pitfalls, and you need to have a lot of cash lined up to be able to do something like this. And some people might say, well, I have all this equity saved up in my home, I could just use a HELOC loan, pay cash for one of these auction properties. Yeah, you can do that. Absolutely you can. As long as you're willing to take that sort of a risk to buy a property that you have no idea what condition it's in or what type of liens or repairs need to be done, then knock yourself out. Just hopefully you don't join them. Now here's another big indicator that shows things are not great right now with people's budgets and the economy. 56% of Walmart's entire annual revenue right now is coming from grocery sales. Well, why grocery sales? Well, because it turns out that on average, Walmart's grocery prices are about 13% lower than most other stores. And in some places, Walmart can actually be up to 20% cheaper, guys. Check this out. In Minneapolis, Walmart's 20% cheaper than the average grocery store. In Boston, it's 19% cheaper. In Delaware Valley, near Philadelphia, it's 17% lower. Washington, D.C., it's 16% lower. And in Chicago, grocery prices are 13% lower. Now, I don't blame anybody for wanting to save money on groceries. I mean, that's great that people are doing this, but the fact that 56% of Walmart's sales is coming from cheaper groceries right now is insane, because this just goes to show how many people are looking to stretch a dollar right now as far as possible, because this is it. There is no more room left for budget expansion. There's only contraction at this point. I need to find ways to save money or make more money, or a combination of both. That's the only solution right now to people's financial woes. And Walmart's very lucky because they're the largest retailer in the country. They're able to negotiate lower prices from their suppliers, and they can pass down those lower prices to the consumers. But at what point is Walmart even going to be making money on groceries? Because maybe in a lot of cases they might have these lower grocery prices to lure you into the store and possibly buy something else, since you can buy basically anything there. And it turns out that even though Walmart's not technically a grocery store, right now they're the largest grocery chain in the United States. Walmart has 5,300 stores in the US, and they're selling more groceries than anybody else, guys. And even people with higher incomes and younger people are starting to shop at Walmart for their groceries, which is not Walmart's traditional demographic. In the past, usually be lower income people shopping at Walmart, as well as older demographic of people. But now everyone's doing it because things cost so much. So sleep on that for a little bit. They're even seeing people buying just less of everything. Instead of buying that 12-pack of chicken legs, they're buying the 6-pack because everything just costs so much. And the reality is, this is my thinking and my reasoning of why this housing market reversal is here to stay, guys. Any little temporary bumps in pricing that we might see because it's the hot summer selling season are going to be just that, temporary, because people just don't have the money right now to be buying at these ridiculous prices and rates. We don't have to look any further than the Walmart grocery report to see that this is true. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.